Welcome to Beyond the Breakwater, where just beyond the crashing waves of fear, discomfort, and doubt lies the greatest potential for life transformation. We want to guide you into the open waters where the calculated risk you take becomes the turning point for you or your organization to thrive. So draw up your anchors and prepare for departure in this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater. All right, we are on episode 4. My name is Lyndsay, and joining me today is Edward. Most people call him Ed.
Edward?
Yeah, Edward.
That's a new one.
It is your God-given name.
That's my God-given name.
Figured we'd use it. Well, Ed, why don't you tell the listeners what we chatted about last week? We mentioned A.L.I.C.E, but if you could just give a broad overview of what they can expect from last week's episode joining into this week.
Yeah, Lyndsay, talking about A.L.I.C.E is probably one of my favorite topics. I think we've learned so much about this A.L.I.C.E population, and for people who don't know what that means, there's really like 3 people groups today. I think we used to have like the, middle class, upper class, poor. I think it's really changed, and I think United Way's done a really great job of identifying a whole nother group of people. And so in America, anybody who makes $30,000 or less is considered in poverty for a family of 4. And then there's this next group between 30 and what we would say 72, but we'll unpack those numbers later. They're in this population right in the middle. And A.L.I.C.E stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. It's the people that are working. It's the people that are in your coffee houses. It's the people that are in the grocery stores. It's the people that are waitering or waitressing or hosting. It's the gas station attendants, your fast food workers. Most everybody who's working in some capacity are probably in this A.L.I.C.E population. And the upper threshold is about $72,000. And if a family of 4 isn't bringing in more than $36 an hour, which is $72,000 a year, they're probably in some kind of a survival mode, and they're really not making it. And then there's that group above them that we don't know what to call them. They're just above 72,000. That's what we've been calling them. So we've got poverty, A.L.I.C.E, and above 72,000. And I think it's that A.L.I.C.E population that's the most forgotten in our society. Even though they serve us every day, they're the most forgotten people group.
So how is it different from middle class?
I don't even know how to put middle class into this anymore, because I think over the years, middle class has gotten a little bit fuzzy and a little bit watered down, like who's middle class, who's not, and what does that actually mean? But I think A.L.I.C.E has changed everything, because now we have a number. So you couldn't say before, oh, the middle class makes between this amount of money and that amount of money. Now we've got the pretty hard data that just says if you're working and you make between 30 and 72,000, you are truly A.L.I.C.E.
So A.L.I.C.E, I had never heard of before actually coming here and working with you. So who started A.L.I.C.E? Who named them? Who found them? When did that all begin?
About a decade ago, I'm guessing. United Way is the one that came out with these numbers. And they just identified this people group that nobody seems to be doing anything with. And they act differently. They think differently. The way they live their life is a little bit different. But I think the more that we work with them, the more that we see the similarities. And all of them, they just want to provide for their own needs. That's really what they want to do. They want to do life. They want to live life. They want to provide for them and their family's needs. They don't want a handout. They don't want charity. See, anytime we talk about a handout or charity, that's poverty. Their dignity, and that's the most critical word that we can talk about with A.L.I.C.E. Their dignity is so intact, and they just want to be able to afford it. And I think that's the most important thing, where you have retail. Retail's great. If you make above 72,000, you can go to anything retail. If you're in poverty, you probably are looking for things that are free because you don't have a lot of money. But A.L.I.C.E, they want to work for it. And they don't want to stand in a food line, and they don't want to have their hand out. They want to do it for themselves. But because life is hard and it's costly, and they're not making enough to be above 72,000, they have to make choices every month. Which bills are going to pay, which bills are not going to pay. Are they going to pay for childcare? Are they going to ask a neighbor to do the childcare? Are they going to, what kind of food are they going to buy? Are they going to buy more nutritious food or more calories? They're having to make choices with healthcare and transportation. Every month they're making choices, very difficult choices because they don't have enough money to do everything they really want to do.
So these are all like pretty generalized statements of an entire group, but can you paint a picture of a specific person? Like who is it? What kind of job do they have? Do they have a family? Like if you were to just name one person.
Yeah, we've used as a good example, Becky. Let's just use Becky as our model. She's in her early 40s. She has 3 kids, 8, 10, and 12. And she's really trying to make ends meet. So she works about 25 hours in one place and about another 20 hours in another place because she can't work full time, because if she works over 30 hours, then the employer would have to give her benefits like health benefits. And so employers are keeping everybody under 30 hours. So it makes it really hard for somebody like Becky because she may be making $15 an hour, which sounds great, but $15 an hour times 40 is only going to give her about $30,000. So here's somebody working full time with 2 jobs and is still in the poverty threshold. So they get just get a little bit more comfortable. She's going to have to work 45 to 50 hours at $15 an hour as a single person to provide for the needs of her family. And that's really hard. I mean, think about having an 8, 10, and 12-year-old and you're working 45 to 50 hours just to survive, and you're not surviving. She's not making $72,000 a year.
Yeah, that seems really unfair.
I don't know what to call it. I think it's really hard. Mm-hmm. And I think I really hurt for them because how do you do it? Mm-hmm. And what do you do? What do you do when somebody like Becky has an 8-year-old who gets sick? What do you do? I know the choices around here. You can see a primary care physician for about $171 if you can get in. You can go to an urgent care for about $50. But then with all the tests, blood work, and everything else that has to be done, easily you're $500-600 in an urgent care. Or you can show up at the emergency room, $600 for an upper respiratory checkup, up to say $2,200 in the ER. So the average is about $1,200. But if you're not making it already, now you've put Becky into this horrific place that she knows she's going to have to charge it on a credit card if she has the credit. And I just heard the other day we actually saw somebody who has 2 credit cards, 36% interest for 2 of them, wow. 24% interest on 2 other credit cards.
Wow.
So imagine charging a $1,200 emergency room bill or $600 for an urgent care bill, and you're paying 36% interest, and you're making those payments, but she could be in one visit to the ER or one visit to an urgent care with a child. She can pay for the next 5 to 10 years just paying interest and never getting out of debt for that one event. And this happens all the time.
But, okay, could it happen because there is a lack of responsibility or prioritization? Like, are they just, like, what are they spending this much money on that they have this much credit card debt? Is the solution, do we educate people financially on how to spend money, like trim down on unnecessary expenses? Like, what has gotten them to this place?
Well, if you look at A.L.I.C.E and you look at the numbers, they're really good numbers. I mean, if somebody doesn't know what A.L.I.C.E is, you can look up your state, and there's about 27 states that are using A.L.I.C.E right now. You can look it up. You can look it up for your county. You can look it up for your township and see how much those numbers are. But it's things like rent, utilities, transportation, food, childcare, healthcare, technology, miscellaneous, and taxes. And if you notice in that budget, if you will, now that's $72,000, they're really good numbers. I mean, they're really accurate. What do you do if you're not making that much money? Now you have to make choices. Like you can't afford to go to the doctor, so you're doing every home remedy, so you're not paying the healthcare expenses. Or let's just say you can't afford to go to a child care. It's over $1,100 for child care. What do you do if you have a younger child, say 5 or 4, that you have to work and you got to put them in a child care? Or what do you do with an 8-year-old during the summertime? You're leaving them home. They're not going to summer camps. They're not doing any of those things. And if you notice that budget I just gave you, there's no money, not $1 for eating out.
So this budget, it has like line items for
Yes.
the things you listed with like an expected amount to pay in each category every month, totaling $72,000 to cover
Correct.
just the basic needs.
Correct.
And what you're saying is Alice is, what are the numbers again?
You mean 30,000 to 72,000?
Yeah. So they can't pay what is the just basic level to survive.
Right.
And not even in that estimate is like a Netflix or eating out or any of the fun things that
Right.
the unnecessary expenses that some could say that maybe trim those out and, oh, you'll survive.
There's nothing to trim out
Okay.
because the things that you're trimming out are vital. You're trimming out your health or the health of your kids. You're trimming out food. And I know more people in Alice who are eating maybe 1 meal a day so that their kids can eat 3 meals a day. I mean, they're giving up, going anywhere except for just to work, store, home, because they can't afford the gas. And something has to give. And it's the unexpected. So what do you do when now you hear a squeak in your car? You're panicking because you don't have any extra cash because you can't make it. Now you have a car repair and you're just scared to death to take your car somewhere because you're like, it doesn't matter what they want. I mean, they may say, oh, you need brakes. Okay, $400, which I know is low. But if it's $400 for brakes, it might as well be $1 million because you don't have 400 because you don't even have, there's nothing in the Alice budget for savings. So how do you get a rainy day fund? And if you do have a rainy day fund, there's so many things that come up that you burn through that. And so now you have credit cards. And the problem that we're watching with Alice universally is that because you're not making it, you use your credit card. Just because you got to get your kids to school. And now you can't pay that gas money back. And then that turned out to, we need a little extra food. And then that turned out to a car repair. And pretty soon, it's not unusual for us to encounter families who have tens of thousands of dollars in credit card bills. And it's not frivolous spending. It's not luxury. It's just from life.
So they don't have money to pay for the things at retail price, the basic necessities. So can we just, as a church or as a business, step up and give them gas cards, do food giveaways? Like, we have excess resources. Can we give them to help them out?
Yeah, Lyndsay, I think that's what churches are trying to do. But I had somebody ask me one time, when's the last time that I had my hand out for food, like begging with a handout? And I said, I haven't. And they said, well, we don't want to do that either. We're working people. I mean, they're working. Their dignity's intact. They don't want to work for 8 hours at a grocery store and then have to go to a food line. They won't do it. They will starve before they do that. So when churches are like, oh, we got a gas card free, they don't want it because you know what you're telling them? Oh, you're poor. And they're like, I'm not poor. I'm a hardworking person. And I show up to work every day and I show up on time and I work really hard and I'm doing everything I can to provide for my kids. Now you're saying my only option is to have a handout and take charity? That is probably the thing that most churches don't understand. If they're giving anything free, they're only going to reach those in poverty, or maybe those that are a little bit above the line. You know, somebody who's working, I don't know, 20 hours, 25 hours. They're working, they're a little bit above 30,000, and then maybe they would do it. But we've watched, we actually went to United Way and we looked at the correlation of if you take $30,000, how many from poverty are still going to, like how many in A.L.I.C.E are going to reach down to take something free? The further away from that $30,000 line you get, so the more money you make, the less likely direct correlation you will never go take a handout. You won't do it.
So there were numbers to support that? Like United Way had reported on that?
We were looking at the numbers because we wanted to find out if any programs that they have, like who are they reaching? And it was really fascinating to see on a graph, a little bit above 30,000, and then it was totally blank.
Interesting.
Totally blank. But then it came back again. Now, this is interesting. United Way, at least here in Midland, Michigan, they're running a after school program. So parents who are working can send their kids to this after school program so that their kids are safe until they pick them up at 5. And it was interesting to see who's taking advantage of that. It's the families that are making around $50,000. Still not above A.L.I.C.E. I mean, they're A.L.I.C.E. But these are people that are like, okay, if you're going to watch my kids and charge me a little less, okay, I'll take advantage of that.
So they still were charged.
I still think they're charged for the program. I believe they're charged for the program. But that's where they only saw the only other concentration of A.L.I.C.E. that United Way is helping out. So people just won't take it.
That's interesting. So where have you heard or where have you experienced how to help in this range, this A.L.I.C.E. range where you can't give something away for free? What do you do?
Well, I know we're a little bit unique, and we're going to get into some of these different things that we do. I would just give you a small example. We have a grocery store, and we charge 5 cents over what we pay for it. And this would be one of those classic times of really learning A.L.I.C.E. And A.L.I.C.E., we've been able to, every day, interact with them and get to know them better. We buy turkeys after Thanksgiving, and so we still had 100 turkeys after Christmas. And what we do is we put together a $30 meal, and somebody underwrote the turkeys, so we would charge $15 for a $30 meal. So now we're in January, we've got 100 turkeys, we can't sell them, And A.L.I.C.E. is coming in every day. We're like, want a turkey for $15? No thanks. How about $12? No thanks. How about $10? No thanks. We couldn't sell them. So we had an idea. See, A.L.I.C.E. doesn't often get a chance to do something for someone else. They just don't, because they're so trying to just take care of themselves. And so this dignity part, we said, we have an idea. Let's see how people respond. People walk in the door and we said, how would you like to make a difference in someone's life? They said, what do you have in mind? I said, if you give a $10 donation for our youth that are going to Mexico to build 2 homes, which will change 2 people's lives and give them homes, in exchange for a $10 donation, we'll give you a $30 dinner. We went through 100 turkeys in a week.
Fascinating.
What's the difference? They gave $10. They wouldn't buy a $30 dinner for $10, but they would give $10 to change a life in exchange for a $30 meal. See, those are the kinds of things, their dignity is so intact. I want to help someone else. And if you're going to allow me to help somebody else and reward me for it, they're all about it.
So I think, if I'm remembering correctly, in the previous podcast, we had challenged people to kind of do their homework on A.L.I.C.E. and look who in the community is serving A.L.I.C.E. They may have done their research and are looking at some of the numbers that United Way has posted and has out there, but what can you provide that maybe the United Way reports don't show from an identity piece of A.L.I.C.E.?
I think we've been talking about that because it doesn't show dignity. It doesn't understand how they act, how they operate on a daily basis. And let me just clarify something for our listeners. We're using $72,000 for the upper threshold of United Way. And I would imagine if anybody from United Way is listening to this right now, they're like, what? No, it's not. It's 59,000. Let me just explain real quick. United Way is always like 2 years in arrear. So up until just a couple months ago, we've been using 2019 numbers, and this is now 2023. And then they just revealed or released their 2021 numbers. Well, that was right on the heels of a pandemic. So in the United Way's numbers were $13,000 for a family of four of tax credits. And the government was doing everything to keep us, families intact and help families. And so they were doing a lot of tax credits that are no longer available. So if you look at United Way's numbers and somebody does the research, they're going to say, Ed, it says 59,000. That's true because of the tax credits. But when we did our homework, families with 3 kids, you only get $2,000 of tax for a tax credit per child. And so we just kind of looked at their numbers and said, all right, let's just do a little bit of adjustment for 2023 because that's who we're talking about now. So we eliminated those tax credits, added the ones that are still here today, and the number that we're using is 72,000, even though United Way's numbers are still 59,000 for 2021.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'll also add too, for any listeners who want to see those numbers, I'll link the form that we've been using in the show notes, as well as some other links from United Way. So you can see visibly what we're talking about and kind of walk through, like we mentioned, those line items where we've made the 2023 adjustments and what reports United Way has used for 2021.
Yeah, that's great. We had to make one other adjustment on it because it said rent in the state of Michigan is $532. And so I just did a little homework to find out where you can find an apartment for $532. And there was only one place in the whole state of Michigan you could buy it. You could get an apartment for that.
I'd like to know where.
I think everybody would. The average is over $800 a month for just a 1-bedroom apartment. And so we made some adjustments in housing to reflect the accuracy of 2023. But it's really important to look at those A.L.I.C.E numbers because I'm giving the state average, and Midland's pretty close to being average in the state. But there are places around Michigan that are more wealthy communities. That $72,000 is in the 80s in some places. And in some very poor areas, super concentrated in poverty and in A.L.I.C.E, the cost of living is less. So those numbers that we're using is an average in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, especially like just hearing the 532 and even the 800. Like when I was looking for apartments and comparing like housing versus apartments and do I buy, do I rent, I couldn't even find anywhere for under 900. So I think those are still, even though you're saying average, I think they're pretty conservative numbers.
They're conservative numbers, which is okay. We're taking the lower number instead of inflating it, but it's also availability. I mean, the average might be where people are paying $800 and some dollars, but good luck finding one. You're going to pay more because they're not available. That's the current average, not availability. I know in Midland, there's waiting lists of up to 200 people waiting for apartments for around that $800 mark. They just don't exist.
So hearing all of this information, I think it can be easy to just listen and go, like interesting. Didn't know that before. Didn't know who A.L.I.C.E is. But what can the listener do about it? Like what is the challenge? How can leaders, business leaders become better leaders when looking at the people who are right in front of them at gas station workers, restaurant workers, grocery store workers? How can we as listeners respond to this need?
I think the best need, first of all, is empathy. Here's the why. You have to look at $72,000 like a water line. And if you're not making $72,000 for a family of four, you're drowning. You can't catch a break. You can't catch your breath. And so any ways that people can lower the water line for somebody in A.L.I.C.E. No, we do it. When you charge only 5 cents over what we pay for it at a grocery store, we lowered the water line. When we sell a $4,500 car that was donated for $600, we lowered the water line. When we charge less for healthcare, we lowered the water line. See, we keep lowering the water lines, and the whole goal is that we just want people to have their head above water, and maybe head above water is 45,000 if we can do, or 40,000 for that family that they're like, okay, I can breathe. That's all we want to do. What I've asked of business owners, let's say you go take your car somewhere to be repaired. Can you just not profit from somebody in A.L.I.C.E? Profit from people who can pay a profit. So if you make above 72,000, charge full rate. But if you're at all in a position and you have somebody who's A.L.I.C.E in front of you, that you would just not profit off of them. You still charge them. You still charge them costs. I mean, they're business people, and they're here to make a profit. But be just a little bit more choosy. Who am I going to make a profit from? And am I going to make a profit from somebody who's having a hard time feeding their family? It's really hard to say, oh, I make more money than that, so on your back, I want to go on vacation. So I want to profit from somebody who can't make it. And I think if people would just go, oh, Alice, you're like Becky. Tell you what, how about I charge a little bit less for you and give up my profit for you? Still, not take a loss, just not profit. That would make all the world of a difference in a person's life, because now you just took the water line down and you made the unaffordable affordable. So it's not hard. What's hard in our society is you can't walk into a grocery store and they're not going to charge you less. So you almost have to go to somebody that's like car repair and say, could you just help me with this? I want to pay. I'm not asking for freebie. But could you just not profit from me? Because I don't have the money. I don't have the extra money. I think a lot of business people who have a heart, because remember, we didn't talk about this, but if you make above 72,000, you really want your life to matter. You're looking for purpose in life. And when somebody like Alice comes into your life and you're like, I can make a difference in their life by just not profiting from them, and it's gonna be a game changer in their life. And they'll be forever grateful knowing that you helped them.
Yeah, I think that's a generalized thing for everybody. I mean, you saw it with the turkeys and Alice, and they just they could pay $10 so that the youth could go to Mexico and build 2 houses.
Right.
Just as the business person can surrender a profit so that a mom can get her brakes changed at an auto garage.
Right. And where we're set up for this in a wonderful way is that, like, when somebody donates a car to our dealership, the average car being donated today is about $4,500 of value. I never underestimate. This is a family probably who's making more. They could sell that car and they could pocket the money. They chose to donate it. And then we turn around, make sure it's safe, got good tires, good brakes, runs well. It's completely safe. And then we sell it for about $600 to a family. So, see, there would be another concrete way. If you got a car and you're selling a car, instead of profiting from somebody in A.L.I.C.E, why not say to that person in A.L.I.C.E, I really want to help you. Don't give it to them. That's demeaning. But say, how much could you afford? Realistically, how much money could you put towards this? And they might say, I could put $500 towards this. Then help them. Take $500 for a $4,500 car. And you can walk away knowing that you helped somebody help themselves, and you did not profit from them, even though you're entitled to that $4,500. See, these are really simple ways. I remember one time we had a stove, and we were selling a stove on Marketplace, and somebody came and I think they were really genuine. I was asking about their family because I'm in tune to this. Heard she was a single mom, had some kids, her stove went out. And I think we charged her $50. I mean, just, she wanted to pay something. And so I said, can you put $50 towards it? She started to cry. And she told me that she had to actually borrow the rest of the money, but she could afford 50. See, we can all do something really simple. How do you help somebody who's really trying? And if we have a little extra, just don't profit from them.
I think there is so much there and so much more that we can expand on when we're talking about handouts versus charging for something, the dignity that's preserved. So I want to tune into that for the next episode. But for now, before listeners go, what's something that listeners can do to engage with what we talked about today?
Boy, Lyndsay, I think I would just say open up your eyes and your ears for every person, everywhere they go. When they walk into the grocery store, look at the person. Ask them how they're doing. Get to know them. And if you happen to know somebody that you think might be in that A.L.I.C.E population, take them out for coffee. Take them out for breakfast, lunch, dinner. Invite them over to your house. Just ask. Test what I'm saying. Don't take my word for it. Test it. Say, what's hard about life? Can you pay all your bills? And they're not asking for a handout when you answer those questions. Be really careful that you don't just become the person who just gives them something. Ask them, how's it going? What's hard? What's been the biggest challenge? Have you ever had to make hard decisions between food and healthcare, or food and medicine? And just get to know them. And I think every person who takes that challenge and does that will walk away and look at every person that serves them in their life, because it's every day. They will look with completely different eyes and a different understanding. And if we could show a little bit more appreciation to them, it goes a long way, because they're trying. They're really trying.
Yeah.
And just how we treat them is going to make a difference.
That's a great challenge. And I think that for some people that will be really easy and fun to do. And for some that might be really, really hard. But I would just encourage the purpose of this podcast, the Beyond the Breakwater, when we're talking about getting out beyond the things that are so scary and the waves that are crashing in. And if you can just get to the open seas and bear with it for a little bit, like the reward of what is out there and the opportunities of what you can see beyond just the scope of your vision that has always been, that's what we're shooting for.
And that may be the thing that we challenged people a couple of weeks ago when we said, do something for the first time that you've never done. This may be it. Mm-hmm. That you take the time to really listen, get out of your comfort zone, ask those questions. That person will never be the same who does that. And the person they ask that to will feel so cared for, because finally somebody might be stepping into their shoes to say, tell me how hard it really is. And they'll probably cry with you, because it's really hard for them. And they don't want others to know how hard it is.
That's great. All right. We'll see everyone next week. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater, a podcast of Elevate Community Ministries. Don't let the conversation stop here. You can email us at hello@beyondthebreakwater.org. We would love to chat with you, answer questions, plan a visit, and help you take your next step. We'll see you next week.